On today's episode of Hey We Need to Talk,
teachers should be able to identify abnormal behavior, but they should never diagnose students.
So sometimes you have to put punishment on a hold, on the back burner for a while, just so you can start building that relationship, that communication with the child. And you have to listen. A lot of times our parents don't listen.
No. Hello everyone, and welcome to the Here We Need to Talk series, a series exploring mental health and how it affects all of us. My name is Gerene Joseph, and today's episode is about mental health and the adolescent. And what do most adolescents have in common? Well, they all spend the majority of their day at school. So we brought in some experts to give counsel and advice to parents and teachers who deal with students on a regular basis. And this episode is split in two. So this first part is going to be talking to the parents, and we have a very special guest. We're going to ask her to introduce herself, tell us her qualifications, where she works, and all that good stuff.
Hi everyone, my name is Josean Nicholas, and I am a counselor for the past 3 years at the Tea and Credit Primary School in Antigua. So I enjoy what I do. I love children. I hold a Bachelor's of Science in Psychology, and I just love children, and I just love wanting to help them go through whatever circumstances they may be facing.
I love it. I love it. Okay, so we're going to jump right into our questions. And again, this is from the perspective of the parent. So if I was a parent, I would want to ask you, what's the best age to start talking to my child about their feelings? Like if they feel sad, if they feel really down, what's the best approach to get them to open up?
Okay, so age for me, you start as young as possible. So age 2 and 3, when they're starting with the ABCs and the 1, 2, 3s, you start talking to them about feelings as well. Sometimes it might come across a little bit difficult, and so I would recommend that you start with the simpler ones. So the happy, sad, angry, you start with that, and you could use chats with them, because they do have feeling chats online that you could find. You could even use videos, PBS, Sesame Street, all those. And I think there's one I normally use, I can't remember the name right, something Martian, and they literally have a full series of all the different emotions, and whereas in the faces, different scenarios. So to me, start as young as possible to start talking about feelings, and when you start as young as possible, you end up having preteens and adolescents being open to how they're feeling, being able to express how they're feeling. But then if you end up not starting that process, you can still start the process of talking about feelings with your child. And here's where you have to have an open relationship, an open conversation with your child about what are feelings and how you are feeling. And for me, it's just the same. Just with your preteens, you can watch videos with them, different movies. You see what they like now, and you can try to relate that to feelings. But the older ones will more understand, if you explain it to them. But for the little ones, you might need to go to, videos and stories and little visual cards for them.
Okay, so I have a question about acting out. There comes a point in time where, they talk about the terrible twos, but then you get a little bit older, and then you have teens who, like, they're always closing their door or slamming their door, and, sometimes we're like, oh, they're so rude and stuff like that. Is that a sign that there might be a greater issue, or is that like a normal part of development?
Well, for me, it goes both ways. You have to kind of find out what's the reason behind the attitude. Yes, the attitude is part of growing up for one part, because they're at that stage where they're trying to find themselves. They're trying to learn, trying to, who am I? And at times they're trying to fit in also with their peers. For me, when at that stage, of course, even us, we can say,
Yeah.
we give our parents a little back chat.
Yeah.
They come and tell you something, and you kind of
Yeah.
answer back. But
Yeah.
then when you've known your child for a while, for all those years, and then you realize, okay, it's no longer talking back to me, but as you say, like the slamming of doors,
Yeah.
the starting to shout, then you have to kind of have a step back and be like, okay, what's really going on with you? And here's where you try to have a conversation with the child. And I often tell parents, even if you're trying to have a conversation with your child, there's not no time to push. If you're gonna have a conversation with the child, you have to be like, ease into it. You can't be pushing on doors.
Aggressive.
What's wrong with you? What's wrong
Yeah.
with you? Why this attitude? But
Yes.
you have to kind of wait until they're calm and they're at a point where you know that, okay, this is a good time that we can have a conversation, have a time for them to say, you know what? After you finish doing this, I want to have a talk with you.
Yeah. So that's one end of the spectrum, like a child acting out, slamming doors, walking away, saying chops, rolling their eyes. What about the other end of the spectrum, where a child might suddenly become withdrawn or introverted, like you just can't get nothing out of them at all? How can you tell, well, okay, maybe that's just part of their personality, that they're shy, or they might be hiding something like sexual abuse or maybe bullying at school? How can you tell the difference between that, and how could you like draw that information out of them without like being too aggressive?
Well, normally when a child is introverted, you can see from a very young age.
Okay.
So it's not something that just happens over time. As you said, being an introvert is a personality type. So you will see that person having those traits from since they were smaller. So having time for themselves, they prefer the time alone, playing by themselves, and then as the years go by, they might prefer reading in their room by themselves or watching the television, because having the big crowds, it kind of drains them.
Yeah.
So being alone, it's not like being alone and they don't have friends. Introverts have friends.
Yeah.
But it just won't be in big crowds or having 5, 10 people at a time. They might have one or two friends. They get their energy from being by themselves. They do have times when they will go out. But for a child who has faced like a traumatic experience, as I said, being a parent, you have to be very observant. If you're not observant as a parent, a lot of stuff fly over your head. And having a child who's gone through trauma, whereas they might be somebody who's always not really going out all the time, but is open to going out, open to meeting new people, and then it just turns. Whereas they don't want to go out anymore, they don't want to talk to anybody. Their schoolwork might be dropping too. It could be they could end up having nightmares, bedwetting for even the younger ones. Eating habits as well might change as well. They might start getting anxious, especially if it's a case where they were being sexually abused from a relative or friend. You normally send them by this person, but then all of a sudden, wait, they don't want to go anymore. Even at school, you start getting clingy, mommy, I don't want to go to school today. And so you have to be very observant and know your child. As I said, being an introvert starts from a very young age. Being an introvert is not something that changes overnight. That's their personality. It's who they are and who you've seen them. They've been all their life.
Yeah.
But having a traumatic experience is a total change in the behavior. So a child that, for you as a parent, if you know your child is normally open to you and then all of a sudden they're closing up, then you should start looking into it because something may be going on. It might not be something as traumatic as sexual abuse, but it could be bullying at school or something. Yeah, something like that.
So if I'm a parent and I see those changes, is it okay for me to approach my school counselor about those concerns? And what exactly should I talk to my school counselor, to the child's school counselor about? Is it something where I ask the school counselor to monitor them, or where I ask the school counselor to speak to certain teachers about it, or I send the child or discreetly set up sessions with my child and the counselor? Like, how do I, as a concerned parent, talk to my school counselor about those changes in behavior?
For me, I normally advise parents try as much as possible to have that conversation first with the child. Have that conversation because you're supposed to have that trust where the child comes to you first.
Okay.
You have that conversation with the child, and then you can go about calling the school. Because for me, you can call the school and ask for the school counselor, or some parents feel it more comfortable to speak to the teacher and then come to me. And then the teacher will kind of give them my number, or they will give the teacher their number to give to me. But for me, it's just be very open with the counselor with what's going on. Call the school, or if you have to call the teacher to ask for the number, and then a meeting will be set up.
Okay.
Once the meeting is set up and you meet the parent, then you can get a full diagnosis of what's really been happening to the child. And sometimes even before the parents come, the teachers actually come, because the teachers will sometimes realize, okay, because I've had situations like that where teachers have come to me before parents have even recognized anything going on with the child. So once we've had that discussion on, what's going on with the child, and they say, okay, these are the things that I observe is happening at home, I would observe the child in the classroom. I would have a conversation with the teacher as well to what's really going on, as because the teachers would see more than me as the counselor would see. And then once all those observations have been made, I would bring the child in. Sometimes I actually ask parents to sometimes step out. I would explain sometimes to parents that sometimes the children tend to be very hesitant to talk depending on what the situation is.
Yeah.
So I would normally ask the child first, would you want your mommy or your daddy to be in a session? Depending on if they say yes or no, then we'll go from there, and then we'll give tips and guidelines depending on the situation. If we have to call social services, or we'd have to call another child's parent because maybe it's something happening in the class, it will go. But it's just be open to speak to your counselor. The counselors at schools are there to help, and just be open and upfront to what's really going on with your child.
But what about parents who, in the cases where the teacher is the one who reaches out to the parent and the counselor, what's your advice to parents who might be in denial about the behaviors that their child might be exhibiting at school?
Oh, I actually have had that same situation where a parent was very much in denial of.
Oh boy.
He had 5 children at the school.
Wow.
And all the teachers had the same issue with the children. And so I actually had to call the parents in, and I had to speak to the parent. And when you're speaking to the parents, you have to have evidence.
Yeah.
You have to have evidence to show them that, okay, this is what your child is really doing at school. And it's not only evidence from the teacher. If you yourself as a counselor should observe the children as well to see what's really going on. And what I did with that parent, even to the point I'm showing her evidence, she was still in denial. I started to ask her, okay, so what about home? Think about what all I'm saying Are the children showing any of these signs at home at all? Even if it's one, just think about home and let me know. And here's where she started to be like, okay, yeah. She started to see a few of them at home. And here's where we started to really open up and started talking about solutions in which we can help the children. But dealing with parents who are in denial, it can be very tricky because you have some parents who use it as a defense mechanism. And for them, it's like, my child, there's nothing wrong with my child. And you have to kind of take it in steps. So for me, you have to kind of sometimes ease back a bit when you're dealing with parents like that. But for me, I keep checking on parents, checking up, how your child is doing. And I keep checking up with the teacher of the child to make sure that, okay, even if the parent might not see anything wrong, my job as a school counselor, my job as a teacher is to make sure that I have someone who is good and who can come out to be somebody who's upstanding in society. But dealing with parents who are in denial is something that is very tricky. It's very hard to deal with them. Sometimes you just have to kind of step back and allow them to eventually come to the realization. But you can't be pushy. You can't be pushy with them. You just have to give them time. Or sometimes, depending on if the situation is getting worse and depending on the situation, for me, I may have to end up with the higher powers. So we might end up have to taking them to the Ministry of Education to deal with whatever matter that's going on.
So the last question is, what communication method should I use to get my child to feel more comfortable opening up to me? I know how we started out. You were saying that at a young age, you use the feeling charts, you use like different programs like those YouTube videos and stuff like that to get the child to open up. But what if, like, okay, you've passed that stage and the child is a little bit older and you realize that, okay, they might be confiding in a friend more, or they might be confiding in someone else more. But as a parent, you really want to be interested in what's going on in your child's life. How do I get my child to feel comfortable talking to me about what's going on inside their life?
You have to create a judgment-free zone. And I think oftentimes we don't create those zones, especially with Caribbean parents.
Yeah.
Don't create those zones. And you have to make the child feel comfortable opening up to you. If the child doesn't feel comfortable, because oftentimes when you do something wrong, you think, well, mommy can bang me.
Exactly. Yeah.
So you have to create a zone where, okay, what's going on? We'll talk about it and we'll go from there. So sometimes you have to put punishment on a hold, on the back burner for a while, just so you can start building that relationship, that communication with the child. And you have to listen. A lot of times our parents don't listen.
No, especially Caribbean parents.
And you cut off, they're telling you about something that, that they did, that you the parent, like, oh, you're not supposed to do that.
Yeah.
But no, you have to listen to the child. One thing, okay, mommy's actually hearing what I'm saying. They're gonna feel start to feel comfortable. Okay, I can actually talk to mommy. And sometimes you have to put your own situations in those conversations as well. Don't let your children think that mommy's also perfect. I'm not saying to divulge your whole business what you used to do when you were younger, but let them understand, mommy kind of understand when I was, or daddy, let me not say mommy alone, because daddy's just supposed to have these conversations as well too. When mommy, daddy was younger, I dealt with this with my parents as well, and I understand how you feel. You have to start empathizing with the children as well. There's really listening to what they have to say, and you have to set out time for the children. For you to build communication, you have to start setting out times. So every day, let the children know that, okay, this is my time. I can go to my parents to talk. After you finish from work, you come home and you relax. Maybe you cook dinner You guys have conversation at dinner. So the children or the child will know, okay, you know what? Dinner time is mommy listening to me, is our talking time.
Mm-hmm.
Or you plan Saturdays, let's go to a spa, let's go to the beach.
Yeah.
While we're in water, we'll get to talk. You have to start building the relationship. It's better when you start very young to let them express their feelings and their emotions.
Mm-hmm.
But if it is that you started a bit later, you have to open up that space, that area for them to understand that I am here, I am listening, I am ready, and I am open. And even when I'm at that point, it's not for you to problem solve. A lot of times parents want to fix everything themselves.
Yeah.
You and your child sit down, find a solution, you work, hear what they're thinking. Okay, mommy, I think if I have a bully at school, maybe I should do this. Or maybe I can do that instead. You help guide them along the way and not you trying to fix the issue or problem solve.
Because some parents want to come to school and fight everybody. And then the child is afraid to tell them about their issues.
Yeah. So you have to really listen. But the judgment-free area, that is something big, big, big. That parents should understand. Don't let the children feel like, okay, every time I'm ready to talk, mommy take about lick. And when you actually talking to your children, this is very important as well, your body language. Because you could be thinking, okay, you're listening, but your face
screw up.
Your face screw up, you're tapping your feet, your hands doing all kind of things. Your body language as well plays a big, big, big part.
Okay. All right. So that was very good information. I learned things I did not know before. All right. And some very good sound guidelines for parents. It doesn't matter who's watching this at what part of the world. I think this is applicable to parents all over. And this is excellent information to teach us how to deal with our child, how to deal with the counselors, and what steps to take to get your child to open up more, for them to feel more comfortable, for them to feel like they could trust you, because you'll always be that child's parent, but you want to have a healthy relationship with them.
Yeah, it does. And it goes on for the future, because once you start talking about feelings, once you start tapping into letting them share their emotions, when they actually get into romantic relationships, it does help. And you prevent your children from knowing how, I forgot to mention this before, even when they're dealing with their feelings, you have to teach them how to cope with the feelings. So if you're, you don't have to be doing tantrums and all this stuff. So once you start practicing all these things that I've mentioned, I'm not saying it's 100% guaranteed, but it will help that eventually you have children who function better, who know how to deal with their feelings better, especially when it's time for them to actually have their own romantic relationship. You start working and stuff like that. You meet all kind of different personalities thrown at you, and you're gonna eventually maybe get a boss that might tick you off. But once you know how to express your feelings and stuff like that, you get yourself out of a lot of problems. Instead of you fighting and cussing, you know how to deal with your emotions, how to deal with persons.
I love that. Josean, Nicholas, Counsellor Nicholas, thank you so much for giving us your time today and for answering these questions. And I know that they're going to help some parent out there to have a better relationship with their child and their child's teachers and counselors. I want you to continue doing what you're doing. You're great at your job. I'm so proud of you.
Thanks, Phil.
And I hope we can have another conversation like this in the future. Thanks again.
No problem at all.
Okay, and that's a wrap.
Bye, guys.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to part 2 of episode 2, where we're talking about mental health and the adolescent. Now, part 1, we had Josean Nicholas from Antigua, school counselor, speaking directly to parents. In this part, we're going to be speaking to the teachers and give them counsel on how to deal with students as it pertains to mental health. And we have a special guest. We're going to ask her to introduce herself, tell us a bit about her qualifications, and then she's going to give us some insight into a couple of questions we have as it pertains to the adolescent and mental health.
My name is Mrs. Gerene Joseph, and I'm delighted to be here to discuss this very pertinent topic. Celine, thanks for having me. I am an educator of 35 years. I have taught in the public system as well as in the private system. At present, I am the education director of a non-profit organization called the North Caribbean Conference of Seventh-day Adventists. I am the education director of that organization, and I've been for almost 10 years. Can you believe it?
That's a long time.
Almost a decade. Yes. I hold a bachelor's degree in education as well as a master's degree in educational psychology from Andrews University in Berrien Springs, Michigan.
Right.
As education director of my conference, I'm in charge of schools on 5 islands: St. Croix, St. Thomas, St. John, the British Virgin Islands, St. Eustatius, and St. Martin.
All right, so I can imagine that as part of your supervisory role, you don't just deal with teachers and their curriculum and labor codes and financial management and whatnot, but you also have to deal with so many issues related to the child. And that is why we have Mrs. Joseph here with us today to give us a bit of insight on mental health and the adolescent. These are such important years, such influential years on the mind and life of a child. So we're going to jump straight into those questions.
Yes.
And the first thing I want to talk about is my upbringing in Antigua. I went to school in Antigua from K through high school, and the teachers had very interesting methods of dealing with problem children. There were a couple teachers who even had belts and paddles, and they gave them names, and this was to instill fear into the children. But there are a couple teachers who took it a bit too far, to the point where some students actually had anxiety issues. They didn't want to come to class, didn't want to come to school, or they just act out completely. So my question is, it's been a few years since that time. I don't know if things have changed throughout the Caribbean. Corporal punishment has always been a big topic, always a big debate issue. I just want to know, what are some methods that you would suggest to teachers and school administrators to de-escalate a situation where a child might be dealing with anxiety, or they might be acting out because of personal issues at home?
First of all, I think things have indeed changed from when you went to school, because corporal punishment is discouraged.
Okay.
In my organization, the North Caribbean Conference, there's a clear policy that there should be no corporal punishment.
Okay.
So we can thank God that that is out of the window. Now, as part of their training, teachers would have been exposed to several child developmental theories.
Okay.
And thus they would be au fait with behaviors which characterize each stage of a child's development. Teachers, therefore, should be in a position to identify when behaviors aren't congruent with the child's stage and age of development.
Okay.
And this would raise a red flag. Teachers should be able to identify, abnormal behavior, let's put it that way, in children, but they should never diagnose students. They do not have the authority to do that.
That's important. Yeah.
Yes, that is crucial. So now here are some strategies which I think that school administrators and teachers can use to de-escalate a situation where a child is exhibiting unacceptable behaviors due to personal problems. Okay. First of all, the child's parents is key. So the teacher should seek to contact the child's parents and express concerns. People do not care how much you know. Teachers know a lot. Yeah. Teachers do know a lot. They have a lot of knowledge. But parents do not care about how much they know. Parents want to know that they care.
Yeah.
So,
Definitely.
in addressing this problem, teachers need to reach out to the parents, find out what's happening at home, but do not be intrusive. They have to be diplomatic as they deal with this situation because it's a sensitive situation. Many times when students act out, as we put it, this is because there's some underlying issue or some underlying need that is not being met. You may find that it may be a child is being physically or emotionally or sexually abused, or probably their needs are not being met. And so the only way that they can react is to behave in unacceptable behaviors. So, number one, as I said, reach out to the parents. 2, let me reiterate, teachers do not diagnose a child's psychological condition. You do not have the authority, the professional authority to do so. Instead, refer the child to appropriate counseling services, which may be in the school. If the school does not have that, then the child should be referred to outside agencies, governmental agencies, which can provide adequate intervention. 3, show genuine concern for the students. Students can tell if we genuinely care and if we have their interests at heart. Avoid shaming students at all costs.
Yeah, that was
Right.
a huge issue growing
Right.
up. I observed in some teachers, they would call them names or they'd bully them.
Right. Yeah, so we should avoid talking down to students and comparing them to others. Because if we do that, students may respond by becoming aggressive or confrontational, or they may just simply withdraw. They do not speak, they just withdraw. And either one of these is bad news. Finally, we must seek to affirm the gifts and abilities of students. If you look carefully, you'll find at least one positive trait or one positive talent that is in a child that we can affirm.
All right. I think that's really good. And the last one is especially important because sometimes teachers tend to affirm students who are stronger in math or
That's right.
gifted in the sciences. And then you have students who are artistic who kind of get left behind, left on the back burner. And, you encourage them and let them know that all of their gifts are important. But when you notice their weak areas, you could better be able to facilitate extra classes or after classes to help to build up their grades. But also you want to affirm those other gifts and talents which may not usually be, affirmed in a educational institution.
Correct. Because a child they may be weak in the academics, but they may be strong in sports.
Yes, definitely.
Or strong in art. So that teacher needs to be aware and find that strength in that student that stand out so you can highlight it and build the child's self-esteem.
All right. The next question. So teenagers and adolescents, they aren't the most rational. They're dealing with hormones. They're dealing with so many changes at such a young age. Some of them, their parents are going through divorces. Some of them come from broken homes. And so sometimes teachers find themselves having to communicate directly with parents because communicating with a child it's not very effective. So I would like to know, what are the steps that teachers should use to diplomatically display issues a child may be having without making it seem like the child is a target or that the teacher themselves is picking on them? So, for example, I might be a parent and the teacher is concerned and the teacher comes to me and, they say, I observe that your child is, they're not performing or they're picking on a particular student. As a parent, your first reaction is, no, not my child. Not my child. And how do teachers approach parents like that? How do they speak to them in honest ways, but also ways where the parent will hear what they have to say?
Excellent question regarding our teenagers. Teenagers can be a very trying time for students. Teenagers find themselves sandwiched between childhood and adulthood. And sometimes we as parents and adults, we want them to behave like children.
Yes.
And then at other times, we tell them to behave like adults.
Yes.
So they're confused. This is a time when students struggle with identity crisis. Who am I really? They try to discover who they are. So here are some steps which teachers may take when attempting parental intervention on behalf of a troubled teen. 1, develop a cordial relationship with both teenager and parents. Convince both that you genuinely care about the child. Trust is very important as well. Trust and confidentiality. When you build that trust between the child and yourself, the child can speak openly to you. So when you approach the parent, the child will not think that you're telling tales on them, or you're trying to cause more trouble in their life. No, instead they'll realize teacher is reaching out to my parent because teacher really cares. And when there's this collaboration between parent and teacher, great things can happen. Great things can happen in the interest of the child. And as I said before, teachers should always find something positive to report. When you reach out to that parent, always find, make something positive the precursor to what you're really concerned about, what your real concern is. Say something positive. Parents like to hear positive things about their students.
Yes.
So, those are some of the things that you can do, and also make the parent, both the parent and the child, aware that they're not alone in this thing. Other teenagers struggle with the same issues. So in other words, there is hope and there is help available for the teenager.
Teachers are not infallible. All right? They're certainly human. They're prone to mistakes. And it is not uncommon to hear teachers in the Western part of the world talk about how, both in a public and private school setting, they do not have the resources that they need to be effective at their jobs. Teaching is one of those trades, one of those disciplines that's highly underappreciated, highly underpaid.
That is so true.
Yet still, there are teachers who show up every day to do their work, to do their jobs. And they are teachers who are genuinely care about students, who genuinely care about children. And they manage to get the job done. What advice do you have for parents who may be extremely critical of teachers who are already operating in a very limited scope? So what I want to do is, even though we're talking about teachers, I know that there are parents listening. There needs to be a degree of compassion and empathy extended towards those teachers. So I want to know, what advice do you have for those parents who are extremely critical of their teachers? And how can parents assist teachers in mentally preparing their children for school so that teachers can deliver optimal instruction?
That's an excellent question. You see, being a teacher under normal circumstances is challenging. But at this point in time with the COVID crisis, it is even more challenging. Because you see, delivery of instruction has changed drastically. And I believe things will never be the same again.
I agree.
Now, teachers therefore have to be creative and innovative in order to ensure that students continue to develop intellectually as well as socially and emotionally. And parents indeed have a part to play. They have an integral part to play. Parents can help, and they need to be not enemies of the teachers, but instead be an ally of the teacher, at whom they can support by speaking positively to their children about their teacher. Instead of being critical about the teacher, big up the teacher. On Teacher Appreciation Day, send something to the teacher to show appreciation. And it doesn't even have to be Teacher Appreciation Day. Whenever something great happens, just send a little note, send a little token to show the teacher that you appreciate them. Also, you can assist by creating mental comfort in the minds of your child, in that you speak positively to them at home, let them know that they can succeed in spite of the challenging situation that is going on now. They can succeed. Help them to feel safe at home and assure them that they'll be safe at school as well. Because you see, some children might be afraid to go to school because they're afraid of getting sick, or of the COVID-19, or they're afraid of dying. So speak to them and tell them that they'll be safe, and encourage them and show them ways in which they can be safe. For example, social distancing, wearing of masks, washing their hands, etc. Parents ensure that your children get a good night's rest. Encourage them to exercise and ensure that they get proper diet. Assist them with their schoolwork wherever it's possible, if you have the ability to. And if you don't have the ability, you can seek help for them. Very importantly also, follow students' progress with the school and specifically with the child's teacher. Always keep in touch so that you know what is going on with your child, so that you will not be shocked at the end of the school year when the child bring home the report, and then you realize, look, my child has been failing. No, keep in contact with the school. Or the child is telling, the teacher is telling, this child's behavior has been horrible. No, keep in touch. Be a strong support of teachers. Be an ally with the teacher instead of being an enemy. This can certainly help.
I love that. And especially to the point where you talk about having positive things to say about the teachers at home, because it's so easy to speak negatively about the teachers and the child is at home. But remember that the child spends the majority of their day with that teacher.
That's right.
And so you're supposed to have a relationship with that teacher. And just like how you shouldn't argue with your spouse in front of your children because you don't want your child
to disrespect
your spouse or yourself, I think it's the same way you don't speak negatively about your teachers, especially if there's no reason to speak. If the teacher isn't abusing the child, if it's something that you just need to interact directly with the teacher about, you go directly to the teacher, the school administrator, and you speak to them, because it might be could just be miscommunication.
Exactly.
You just need a simple conversation to clear it up. Because once that child hears you say something negative about that teacher, that's it. They're going to carry it in their mind. They're going to encourage other students to disrespect that teacher. And then it just breaks down the entire trust in the educational system. So I think that's why it's important to have a personal relationship with the teachers and continue communication with them on an ongoing basis.
Correct.
The final question is about teachers' mental health. Now, I know we're talking about mental health in the adolescent, but the teachers are the ones who interact with the students on a consistent basis, on a day-to-day basis, and majority of the day. So not only is the child's mental health being affected, but also the teacher's mental health.
That is so true.
So, Mrs. Joseph, what advice do you have for teachers to take care of their mental health, especially during the pandemic? Because you touched and said that I would have thought that it would have been easier to deliver instruction during COVID-19 because it's virtual and maybe you have limited hours. But you're saying that it's even more difficult for teachers and school administrators. So what advice do you have for them to take care of their own mental health? Yeah,
it is crucial that teachers be able to take care of their own mental health. It is said that you cannot give what you do not have. So say that one more time. One cannot give what he does not have.
In other words, you cannot pour from an empty cup. Those of you who are on Instagram, I'm pretty sure you've seen that floating around on social media. You cannot give from an empty cup.
Correct. Very well said. Now, here are some things that teachers can do to take care of their mental health.
Okay.
Number one, control the controllable during COVID. So teachers at this difficult time should control the controllable.
Okay.
The serenity prayer says, Lord, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the different. Teachers, there's some things that you just cannot change. You cannot control. You cannot control who contracts COVID or who dies from COVID. You cannot control that. But there's some things that you can control. You can control how you spend your time, how you prioritize, your mindset. You can control how much media you take in and the type of media. That is within your control. So you can take care of that. By focusing on the things that you can control and prioritizing the ones that are healthy, you can help put your mental health front and center. Okay. Right. So that's the first one, Celine. Teachers should try to control the controllable during this COVID crisis. Then teachers should seek to schedule time for their own self-care, not to maintain their mental health. Do things for themselves that they enjoy doing. Exercise, read, journalize, meditate. If you have a hobby, work on your hobby or develop a new hobby. Those things assist with mental health. So take care of yourself. If you do not take care of yourself, you cannot take care of others. Then get your body moving. Exercise is key to mental wellness. So take time out, because in this COVID time when there's remote learning, teachers spend hours at their desk in front of the computer. Sometimes they're zoomed out. So take time out to take a break. Take a break. Get up from your desk, walk around or go outside, inhale the fresh air, get some sunshine, take a break. Get your body moving. That is key. Then model self-compassion. Be concerned about yourself. It's okay. It's okay to speak kindly to yourself. So take some ice cream, get some pizza, just pamper yourself. That is important as well. Then set reasonable expectations for yourself, and you can say no. Sometimes we keep going and going and going, and saying yes to everyone who asks us to do favors. You can say no. Okay. Say no. Then communication is vital. Communicate with your peers or your colleagues. Communicate with your supervisors. Let them know what is happening with you. Self-disclose. It helps. Because someone may be able to help you. Someone may be able to refer you to the resources that you need, the help that you need in order to make your life better. Okay? And dedicate a specific workspace. So in your home, just set aside a little table or a room where you work from. So that is the workspace. And then when time comes, just separate from that. Just move away from that. So do not make your workspace in your bedroom. No, you do not do that. Put it separate and apart. Okay. So when office hours are over, when school hours are over, when your schedule ends, you move away. So mentally it helps because it detaches you work away from your person. Okay, so those are some tips that would be useful to educators, to teachers, as they try to maintain their mental health during this very difficult time.
And those are excellent tips indeed. I hope that the teachers listening will employ those tips. I hope that the parents listening will also employ the tips that we shared today during today's dual session. It was very informative. Just want to thank Ms. Josean Nicholas for coming on and Mrs. Gerene Joseph for coming on as well. This is Mental Health and the Adolescent, part of the Hey We Need to Talk series. I'm Gerene Joseph. Thanks again so much for joining us, and until next time, bye.